Hey fam, Kisky here. Today, photography 101 part 2. Today we're going to be learning about the camera body, where you'd find the different buttons and to build your confidence. So let's get into it. I remember the first time I held a camera, a professional camera. I had just finished learning exposure triangle. I just learned everything I needed to know, and I was so sure I was ready for photography. They gave me the camera, I went inside and tried to shoot, and boom, my photo was just white. I couldn't believe it. My eyes teared up. I couldn't believe I spent a whole week learning and building that excitement to the point that when I got the camera, it was just shattered. Like at that point I was like, I think I'm not cut out for this, but I don't want you to have that story. So today we're going to be looking at the camera body to understand the different parts of the body, where to find everything that you need, and then we shall go into a part 2 where we shall enter deep into the menu settings, the quick settings, and then our last class would be on lenses. So I think we have 3 more videos of this camera photography 101, but today we're just going to learn the basics of your camera body. Now when you look at a camera body, obviously here I have a Nikon Z6, but you may have a Canon or a Sony. Some of these things are relatable and I'll try to differentiate them as we go along the way. You have 2 parts of your camera body. You have the body itself, and then you have the lens. This is your lens, right? And the lens has its own buttons, and then you have the body. I'll start with the lens because the lens is pretty simple, right? So this Nikon body here, we have 1 button. This is the button for your focus mode. So you can have autofocus or manual focus. If you're in manual focus, you're setting the focus for yourself, meaning you need someone to adjust this knob to find your focus. But if you're in autofocus, the lens will do it for you. Now some lenses are only manual focus, some lenses are only autofocus, but majority of what you and I will be using have both modes. So that's very important to understand. Usually you find that a videographer may prefer to use manual focus because they're moving a lot and they want to be able to control that. But as a photographer, you'll find that most of the time you just prefer to have it in autofocus. I have a different lens here. I have a 70-200. Why I want you to look at this is because as this camera only has 1 button, this one has 3 buttons, right? Or yes, it has 4 buttons. You have one for your focus distance, how your minimum focus, and then we have a button for your autofocus. Whereas the Nikon says A and M, the Canon is AF and MF. That shouldn't confuse you. Those are just different ways of stating that same thing, right? And then we have a stabilizer modes that we didn't have here. Usually in long lenses you need stabilization because there's a lot of movement of the glass. So here we have stabilization modes. On a Nikon you'll find that it's vibration modes. Again, it's just naming, but it's the same thing. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. We have the different modes, 1 or 2. When we come to lenses, we shall learn more on that, but for now let's stick to this. So that's basically what you'll find on your lens. We have the body itself, the one with the most buttons. These buttons may have different labels on a Canon, but it's pretty much the same thing, so it shouldn't confuse you if you're learning on a Canon and then when you come to service or when you go to work in the field and they give you a Nikon and you're like, what is this? You shouldn't be like that. That's why we're having this class, so that your confidence builds up, right? So obviously you have your on and on switch, very simple. The shutter button, very important button, right? This is the button that you press to be able to take your photo. Now the shutter button has 2 modes. It has the half press and the full press. When you half press your shutter button, you're finding focus. For example, if you're using the autofocus, if you half press your shutter button, you're finding focus, and when you fully press it, you take the photo. So that's very important to understand. So usually before you shoot, you need to half press to be able to find that focus and then shoot. If you don't half press, you'll find that you miss your focus or you've misfired and your focus won't be there. So the half press and the full press, very important. Now next to it, I have the ISO setting, right? So we want to find out where do you find the exposure triangle, because that's the main thing that you're going to be using on a camera body. Now on a Nikon, usually you have an ISO button. It will usually be on the top part of your body, or on the left side if you're using something like a D7000, I believe, or D7100. You'll find I have an ISO button, and when you press it down, you realize that you can see your ISO settings. So if you rotate the knob at the back, you will find that there is a knob at the top but usually at the back which you can rotate, and that will change your ISO. Now, one thing you should know, the major difference I've seen with the Nikon and Canon is that Nikon usually has two rotating knobs, one at the front and one at the back. The one at the back usually is used for shutter speed, and the one at the front is used for your aperture. When it comes to Canon, you have one single rotating knob on top of your camera, which is for your shutter speed. But what Canon has is an asterisk sign, and that asterisk sign, if you hold it down like you did with ISO and rotate this knob on top, you'll find that you're changing your aperture. So that's the key difference. Most of the new mirrorless Canon cameras have another wheel similar to this one that I have here on my Z, and it is designated to your ISO, right? Very key to understand, and these are settings out of the box. You'll find that sometimes photographers who have shifted from Nikon to Canon want to change or customize it, or someone who's just a Canon shooter prefers to customize this wheel to be shutter speed. Staying on top here, we have another wheel, usually to the left, where you find it has some modes, or it has some letters. Now these are different modes in which you can shoot in, right? I have M, which is manual mode, which we are learning throughout this course, so your camera should always be on M. Then we have A, which is aperture priority. Then we have shutter priority. We have program. We have auto. On this camera, I have U1, U2, U3. Those are the user settings. Those are settings you may prefer to use or customize for yourself. Now, aperture priority, usually the camera will be able to help you change the shutter speed, and you'll have control over your aperture. Then shutter priority, you'll be able to control your shutter, but the camera will control for you your aperture. Some wheels will have a video mode, right? A video mode where you can change settings, but for the Nikon, it has a designated button where you can switch between photo and video. Very important to understand this, even if it's on the rotating knob on top or it has a designated button, very important to know where to find this button. Again, for someone who's been doing service for a long time, sometimes you're using these cameras for video, sometimes you're using these cameras for photo. A filmmaker will definitely want to shoot in the video mode because you can use more of the settings. You can change your frame rates, you can change your colors to what you want. You can shoot video in the photo mode, but you won't have ability to change these things as much as possible. So it's very important. We have a play button. A play button usually is what you want to view. Probably you want to view what photo you have taken. For example, if I took this photo and I wanted to view it, I can press the play button and then I view the photo I have just taken right now. So that's the play button. It allows you to view what you've seen. Then you have a delete button, obviously to delete if you don't want the photo. You can delete the photo. For example, if I looked at the photo, I don't like it, I delete. Then the Nikon has a button that you can use to move your focus point, right? So we have an LED screen here where you can see everything you're shooting. But if you wanted to move that focus point, it usually denoted it with a red box or depending on your focus mode, you can use that button to change. Today's cameras are touch, so you can actually change your focus mode by just touching the screen. So that is also something you should understand or know. Then we have this wheel down here. On the Nikon, it's not a wheel, it's just buttons. On the Canon, you'll find that it's a wheel. You can also use it to move your focus points, which if you don't want to use this button up here, then we have a button called I. On Nikon, it is I. On the Canon, it will be Q. These are just your quick settings or information that you need to see quickly if you're shooting. For example, here we have the picture control, which is the settings of contrast, saturation, those quick settings. Then you have your image quality. Are you shooting RAW? Are you shooting JPEG? Then we have flash modes, obviously. We have Wi-Fi connection. We have release mode. Release mode is how fast you want your camera to shoot. Do you want it to be a quick one like, or do you want it to be quicker than that? We can do something quicker. For example, high continuous. This is high continuous for you, right? So how fast you want your camera to shoot. Then we have the autofocus area. Now, according to your LED screen, you could want to focus on a small point, or you'd want to focus on a large point. Those are your focus area modes. We have focus, now we have what we call focus mode. Those are focus area. This is focus mode, meaning single or continuous. Is your subject in one place, or is your subject continuously changing its position so you change your focus according to that. Vibration reduction, like we saw on the lens for the Nikon. Then we have metering, where you want to understand your exposure, your image size, right? How large you want your raw file to be and how large you want your JPEG to be. You could want your raw file to be large, you could want it to be small. And then finally we have white balance. White balance, we shall learn it as well as we come. If you want your image to be cold, if you want your image to be warm, that is your white balance. But those are your quick settings. Now again, on the Nikon you'll find that it's I, on the Canon it's Q. You'll find similar settings, probably with different symbols, but they're pretty much the same thing. We shall move into a class where we shall look at each of those settings and understand what they do. But today I just wanted to show you where everything is so that you're confident enough to be like, okay, I know where to find this, I know where to find that. Looking at the LED screen, for example, here I have a lot of stuff. I have the shutter speed, I have the aperture, the exposure. This would be my memory card if I had one in, my battery life, right? This is to see what mode I'm using in touch. Then you have your exposure meter here. So that's your LED screen. We have the menu button, obviously, to go into those deeper settings. If you want to understand things like color space, lighting, all those things, auto bracketing, you find in your menu. Again, we shall have a different class because that is a lot to cover today. Then on the Nikon, we have a button here for your drive modes or your release modes. Now, it's very important to understand what is denoted, what its symbol signifies, right? If I see this symbol, I already know that it's for release modes, right? And it will be the same across all the models of Nikon, so you shouldn't get confused. But if you're using a Canon, you'll understand what the symbol means. If the symbol for the release modes is different, get it in your mind so that whenever you're using Canon models, it will always be the same. You won't have to get confused. Then obviously we have an opening port for your cards. Here we have two slots. We have an SD card slot and then a CFast slot in the Z6 Mark II. In some of your cameras you may have two slots, you may have one slot. For some cameras you will find that the battery cage is where you find the memory card. So the battery cage is usually below. For example, the Sony I'm using, that memory card also goes below, right? The Sony that I'm using to shoot. So that is very important to understand. And then lastly, on your body you have a shoe. This shoe can be used to connect various third-party or secondary parts. For example, if you're using a strobe light, which is wireless, you can use this wirelessly. You can just put a transmitter here. You could put your microphone, a wireless microphone here. You could put a lot here. So you could have a secondary monitor. You connect it through here. So this shoe is very important to keep it safe and clean. Maybe something I hadn't touched is this screen on top here. Some cameras have it, some don't. It just shows you quick information. Again, your drive modes or your release modes, your memory card space, how many photos you have left. I don't have my memory card in right now, so that's why it's showing E. Your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture and your battery life. Very quick settings that you need to know where to find. You also have the button that you press to remove the lens. You don't just rotate the lens out, right? There's a button that you press, and then when you rotate you can remove the lens. So be kind to your body, don't just force it out, right? This equipment that you buy or invest in is quite expensive, so you need to take care of it. Use it kindly, keep it safe, clean it as much as you can, and keep it looking fresh, right? That is it for today. That is the class. That is everything that we're going to be looking at in the body. I hope you understand it. Drop any question you have, I will be able to answer it happily. But I hope you've understood where to find the different settings. It's very important to know that. That is the class today. Like the video if it helped you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share it with someone who you believe wants to learn photography, or it will help. Hit the notification bell so that you get notified every time we post a video. And I'll see you in the next one. And hey, always remember to deliver a feeling. Peace.